What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, Spartans of all ages, Joker back again, once again, and today, people, with the unveiling of Halo Infinite only days away, I wanted to go ahead and jump all aboard that Halo hype train.
But Joker!
I hear you cry out in your shrill, tremulous voice. What do we say to hype? Oh, I didn't say I was hyped, though there is something one might describe as a, squeamish, what would the word be? Glee, buried and clenched and balled up and even somewhat fluttery in the pit of my gut. It's probably nothing more than bad sushi or indigestion, because as we all know, hype is the mind killer. Hype is the little death that brings about total obliteration. So no, I am not hyped. Not even a little bit. Not at all. Not even once. Blasphemy. Anybody who says that is a blasphemer. Nah, I'm more like that guy who's selling you things to enjoy on the hype train, but instead of grossly overpriced peanuts and soda and fluffy pillows, or those, single shots of alcohol that come in the little miniature bottles that are always marked up like 800%, I'm actually not here to sell you anything, because this is a video on YouTube and it's free, short of some ads that you have to click away from after 5 seconds. Unless you get one of those banner ads, which, it's just like at the bottom of the screen and you just click away. Or unless you use ad block and you don't get any ads at all, which, okay, I get, but also hey, toss a coin to your bitcher? Oh, valley of plenty, oh, valley of plenty, oh. But back on track. No. I'm not here with overpriced, underfilling food and fluffy pillows, or annoyingly overpriced shots of rum. I'm here to bring you another episode of the greatest flexes in all of Halo. That's right, ladies and gents, boys and girls, Spartans of all ages, we are back again, once again, with the greatest flexes in Halo. Except, like last time, this flex video will be about a singular flex. And as we established in the last Halo Flex video, God, you can tell I don't do this for money, the almighty Flexicon allows for a single flex in a video if that flex is epic enough to carry the video in its own right. Now, the last episode coming out forever ago contained the single greatest flex in all of Halo. That time that Vice Admiral Preston J. Cole blew up a goddamn sun and destroyed a Covenant armada just to feed his massive ego while faking his death and fucking off to be with the woman he loved. Undeniably the single greatest flex in all of Halo. Hell, the Covenant body count from this single act outstrips and spanks any other single act of human ingenuity ever committed during the Human Covenant War. Yeah, I'm sorry, even our old buddy, John, the Master Chief, he wishes he could have a kill count that high. But you know what? There is still time, and if Troy Denning has any say in the matter, he'll get there, if only retroactively. But I digress. In that video, I said if it got some odd number of 1,000 likes, before the end of the week, I would do my favorite flex in all of Halo as a video. And since this video didn't come out then, obviously you guys totally failed at that goal, but there will be a redemption arc in this video. If you guys can get 3,000 likes in a week's time, I will do another greatest flexes in Halo video within the next week. And if this video manages to get 5,000 likes within the next week, I will do the greatest flexes in Destiny Part 4 within the next week. I know you guys have been asking for the greatest flexes in Destiny Part 4 or Part 5, whichever one we're on. Now show me that you really want it by watching and liking a video that has nothing to do with Destiny. Evil, I know. But enough talk. As our Lord and Flexinator once said, let's get into the meat and potatoes. Also, spoiler warning for the end of Ghost of Onyx. So a little bit of setup, because our flex today comes from the very last chapter of a 384-page book. And for as light as a read as that might sound, the book spends those 384 pages doing nothing but flexing on us, the reader, by setting up the very foundations of modern Halo lore. Not since Halo: The Fall of Reach or Halo Combat Evolved has a piece of Halo media been so vital to the exploration of the franchise. Halo Reach could not exist without this book. Most of modern Halo fiction could not exist without this book. Halo: Ghost of Onyx is a keystone in the foundation of modern Halo. As important, if not more important in many ways, than the original trilogy of Halo games. It's just sad that the house that was built on that foundation largely has been somewhat of a failure, or at least a disappointment. The point that I'm getting at is this book is dense with narrative and story and lore and things happening. What I will do is give you a super compressed overview of the story for this to make sense. So, elite forces have arrived on Onyx to plunder the Forerunner world. For those of you who do not know, because every video is somebody's first, The events of Ghost of Onyx take place roughly around the end of Halo 2 and before Halo 3, and the elites we see in Ghost of Onyx are coming from Delta Halo, and they're looking for tech to aid them in their war. Kurt 051, a Spartan 2 and head of the Spartan 3 program on Onyx, is joined by Dr. Catherine Halsey and the single greatest Halo waifu for lifeu, don't fucking at me, the shotgun-wielding, EVA enthusiast, fastest Spartan alive, Kelly the Rabbit 087. And then later by Fred 104, Linda 058, and a new addition to Blue Team, Will 043, who is clearly wearing his red armor today. Ah, Will, we hardly knew ye. Blue Team and the surviving Spartan 3 Gammas, learn more about them in my greatest flexes in Halo Spartan 3 Edition, plug, are trying to survive, and their only hope is buried deep in the core of the Forerunner world, a gateway to a micro Dyson sphere. However, there's only one problem. The gate was opened because the activation of Delta Halo, and is closing on a timer. So now our intrepid heroes, Kurt, Blue Team, and the Gammas have to hold off an army of Covenant with their backs against the wall until the gate is just about ready to close to deny the Covenant forces entry so they can make their escape. Outnumbered and outgunned, they're losing. Which is where our story picks up. The hill trembled behind Kurt. He turned to see a hunter pair plod onto the top at the 4 o'clock position, flanked by a vanguard of 3 elites with energy swords. Kelly reacted first, moved in, grabbed an elite's wrist, and snapped it. She followed with an elbow to the elite's face, twisted the sword free, and slashed, cutting it in half, as well as the 2 elites on either side. She spun to face the hunters. For once in her life, she was too slow. The monsters had leveled their fuel rod cannons at Kelly. They had her. Holly jumped between Kelly and the weapons. The hunters fired, outlining both Spartans in the blinding green radiation for a split second. The overpressure of both point-blank fuel rod cannon detonations threw Kelly, Will, and Lucy into the air. Holly exploded backwards, a spray of molten spy armor, disintegrating flesh, and jets of smoke. Kurt stood horrified, frozen, but then instincts and training clicked on full force. And without thinking, he rushed forward before the hunters could finish his prone teammates. The nearest hunter turned on him faster than he expected, slicing its 2-ton shield into Kurt's solar plexus. The outer layer of Kurt's armor cracked, and the liquid ballistic underlayer failed and squirted out. Pain ripped through his torso, ribs cracked. He coughed, and blood splattered the inside of his faceplate. He dropped in a heap at the hunter's boots, dazed, only recovering his wits enough to see the hunter raise both fists over him for the killing blow. Linda's sniper rifle cracked. The exposed region of the hunter's midsection exploded in a massive orange, but it remained miraculously upright. Will hurled himself at the hunter and knocked the beast off its feet and into its mate, and the 3 of them tumbled down the stairs. Kurt got up, ignoring the near-blinding pain, and limped to the edge. Will stood between both hunters at the base of the hill. He kicked the nearest in its unarmored mid, and it staggered back. Around him were a dozen elites who, confused by the sight of a lone Spartan engaging 2 hunters in hand-to-hand combat, were momentarily too stunned to act. Kurt and Lucy opened fire, suppressing the elites before they regained their senses. One hunter lashed out with its shield. Will ducked, darted inside its reach, and battered its bruised midsection, punching through flesh and ripping out wriggling chunks of composite eel colony. The second hunter angled away from the fight and brought its cannon to bear. Will spun around. The hunter shot. Will's energy shield vanished, and the front of his Mjolnir armor melted. He took a step towards the beast and collapsed. The hunter turned and roared at the Spartans at the top of the hill, and then one started to bring its tremendous shield back in line. A spunker missile screamed past Kurt's head, leaving a spiral of propellant exhaust, streaking towards the hunter and impacting dead center of its mass. The air erupted into a blurred sphere of explosive force. The nearby elites were tossed aside like rag dolls, their shields flaring. The hunter burst into a cloud of snake-like parts that wetly splattered upon the floor. Kurt turned and saw Fred kneeling next to him, his spent spanker tube smoking. It was silent. Nothing moved. Not the elites, the hunters, or William. So, as it's plain to see, things are not going well for our intrepid heroes. 2 Spartans dead in a matter of seconds. One, an old friend to Kurt. The other, a girl he'd known since she was 4 years old. And if that wasn't somehow bad enough, the 200 grunts, 9 hunters, and 30 elites were just the tip of the spear, meant to soften up the Spartans. Amassed behind an energy shield at the back of the battlefield now sat hundreds of elites. On top of that, if the death of Holly and Will weren't already a terrible toll to pay, the only thing now holding Kurt together, after taking the Hunter's shield to his solar plexus, is biofoam. His kidney had been lacerated, and if he wasn't operated on immediately, he would bleed out. But there's not time for that, and our story continues. As Dr. Halsey and Kurt have a conversation, and Kurt finally sees a way that they can win. Once it closes, the slip space field will remain intact, Kurt asked. I have no reason to believe otherwise, Halsey replied. Impenetrable, Kurt whispered. To any force in our normal 3 dimensions, yes. The Sentinels, the Halo rings, this so-called shield world, and the clockwork design that the Forerunners had set in motion millennia ago was about to end. And it made sense to Kurt. At least made sense in terms of him now having a winning option. Grossly outmatched and outnumbered, Kurt comes to the realization he only needs to delay the Covenant long enough for everybody to enter the shield world proper. And he does just that. Now, throughout the video, purely because the length of what I'd be reading would be ludicrous if I didn't, I've been trying to TLDR and summarize entire sections and pages, and, well, there's no really doing that for this last part, as doing so would rob it of its weight, its gravitas, of its gut punch. So, sit back, relax, and listen to what is quite possibly the greatest 2,061 words ever transcribed to Halo canon. For the last 2 decades, Kurt had struggled to keep his Spartans alive. But what if Dr. Halsey had been correct, and their battles meant nothing? What if, no matter how valiant they fought, they could not win this war? Did it make sense to die, or was it better to live and fight another day, even if that day was very far away? He turned back to the Spartans. Tom, Lucy, Team Saber, he said over comm, set Dante and Will on the pods. Saber will go ahead and scout the core. Tom and Lucy nodded, and with help from Olivia and Mark, they gathered the fallen Spartans. Ash jumped to the center and approached. Sir, he said, we're not leaving the fight. This isn't about a fight, Kurt told him. You have a mission to accomplish, son. Carry out my orders. Ash motioned for Olivia and Mark to join him near the rift. Go, Ash told him. Olivia and Mark looked at Kurt, and then, together, jumped into the brilliance. There were a pair of flares, and they vanished. Ash hesitated. His hand moved up as if to salute. But he stopped. Recalling the standing order of no saluting in combat areas, he stood straighter, gave Kurt a nod, and jumped after his teammates. Kurt keyed the comm. Saber 1, you read me? We're go! Ash's voice Dopplered into the ultrasonic. Saber 1. Ash. Static washed over the channel. Not even a comm signal made it through, an observation that strengthened Kurt's conviction that he was doing the right thing. He hoped for the best. Hoped Saber and the others would be okay. Pods, Kurt said, and motioned towards Tom and Lucy. His NCOs pushed the cryopods and the bodies of Will and Dante through. More flashes. Silence. Chief? Doctor? Kurt said. You're next. Mendez looked at the spiral rift and then to Kurt. He swallowed and said, Aye, aye, sir. We'll see you on the other side. For once, Dr. Halsey had nothing to say. Instead, she made the traditional Spartan 2-finger smile gesture over her face. She blinked quickly and then turned to the fissure. Mendez took her by the hand, and they stepped, and were gone. They're starting, Fred announced over comm. Guard the opening, you two, Kurt ordered Tom and Lucy. Kurt then moved back to the edge of the hill, and watched with Fred as 150 elites moved towards them. This was not the slow and careful march with overlapped shields. They charged in mass. Banshee swooped up and over the formation, too high and too low, accelerating ahead of the Covenant infantry, and then over the hill. They ducked behind the towers, and Linda popped out as the Banshees passed. I have them. Linda's sniper rifle was on her shoulder. She stood motionless for a heartbeat, then fired once at the receding flyers, moved her aim slightly, and fired once more. The rear 2 Banshees pilots fell. Riderless, the Banshees nosed to the floor, bounced, and sparked to a halt. Linda dropped the magazine, examined the chamber, cycled the bolt, and then set it down. I'm out. Kurt, Kelly, and Fred leveled their assault rifles at the remaining flyers and opened fire. Tracer rounds arced through the air and stitched over the Banshees. Smoke billowed from the leader and erupted into a ball of flame that smeared through the air. The last lone Banshee pulled up and circled back. The advancing horde of elites and hunters was only 200 meters away. A few in their ranks fired, and wild energy bolts streaked overhead. The towers now lay 30 degrees off the deck, and the hill only 3 meters tall. Kurt knew they'd soon have no cover left. Fred glanced at the open smoking bolt of his MA-5B. I'm out too, he said. Kurt opened the administrative subdirectory of his heads-up display and accessed Spartan 104's files. As acting CO of Blue Team, I hereby grant you the field commission to the rank of Lieutenant Junior Grade. Kurt told Fred, congratulations. Fred shook his head, not understanding. Kurt uploaded Fred's change of rank, and his IFF icon blinked to the star and bar insignia of Lieutenant. As an officer, you have to keep your eye on the larger picture, Fred. Get your team through the slipspace field. I'll be right behind you. Linda and Kelly gathered around them. Kelly whispered, we lost you once, Kurt. We're not going to leave you again. Plasma artillery pounded the face of the hill, shattering stone, and the superheated convection rolls distorted the air. No one's leaving anyone behind, Kurt assured her. I just have to rig up a little welcome present for our friends. He grabbed the pack with the Fenris warheads and swung it over his shoulders. Kelly, Linda, and Fred exchanged glances. I'll be right behind you, Kurt told them. Now go. The Spartan 3s are going to need you. A hail of needler shards arced up and over the top of the slope, impacting the surface around them. The Spartans huddled together, presenting the smallest targeting surface, their energy shields flaring as the crystal rounds detonated. The hardened plates of Kurt's spy armor cracked, and the concussion rattled Kurt's bones, splintering the hardened biofoam in his abdomen. He tasted fresh blood. The bombardment ceased. Hurry, Kurt told them. They all jogged to the center. The rift was fading, and was now only a meter across. Deep inside, Kurt caught sight of a ribbon of blue and silver, water glistening in the sunlight. Kelly and Linda entered without hesitation. Fred halted, turned, and held out his hand. Kurt took it and shook. Fred stepped backward and vanished. Only Tom and Lucy remained, still standing guard by the rift, their spy armor picking up and mimicking the gold sunlight in the fissure. Okay, you two. With all due respect, sir, Tom said, we're not leaving. You'll have to court-martial us. Lucy said nothing, but made her intention to fight understood as she hefted their last Spanker missile launcher. The rift wavered, diamond, and contracted to a mere half-meter. There's no time for this, Kurt growled. Tom took a step closer to Lucy. Of course, Kurt had been foolish to think Tom and Lucy would leave him after so many years together. Orders or not. Perhaps they even knew what he had in mind. Okay, you win. How much ammunition do you have? Kurt moved to Tom. We'll pool our reserves. Tom looked down at his rifle. Kurt hit him, his flattened palm connecting with the underside of Tom's helmet. The impact lifted the Spartan half a meter off the ground, and he landed in a heap. Kurt wheeled on Lucy and held up one warning finger, indicating that she stay put. He checked Tom's biosigns. No bones broken, no cerebral swelling, just cold-cocked. He'll live, he said. You're both going to live. Now give me a hand. Shadows crisscrossed the hill, and 50 meters overhead, Kurt watched 3 Banshees streak past. Lucy dropped the missile launcher and helped Kurt pull Tom up. Kurt wrapped his limp arm around her shoulder. You two didn't survive Pegasi Delta to die here, he told her. There's too much left for you to do. She shook her head violently back and forth. Yes, he said. Don't make me. His vision blurred, and a wave of dizziness washed over him. His heart struggled, pumping harder and faster. There was a warm trickle in his stomach. He was losing more blood, slipping into shock. Plasma bolts stitched the stone nearby, shattering them, as Banshees screamed by on a strafing run. Please, he whispered. Lucy reached up to Kurt's faceplate, touching 2 fingers to his mouth. She struggled to make a sound, but all she could manage was a half-choked cry. He took her hand, gave it a squeeze, and let go. Lucy lingered, looked at Kurt one last time, and then slipped into the rift. Goodbye, he said. They were gone, all of them. Now Kurt could concentrate on what had to be done. He picked up Tom's MA5K. The ammo counter indicated half a magazine. It would have to do. He grabbed the last missile launcher too. He was sure he could find a use for it. The hill around the center was only a meter tall now and shrinking rapidly as the concentric rings eased back into the floor of the room. The fin-like towers folded inward, almost flat against the ground. Elite snipers poked over the top of the hill and fired a tight cluster of plasma. Smoldering, Kurt dropped to his knees. Blackness clouded his mind. He struggled to stay conscious, fought his way back by sheer willpower, and his vision cleared. The sniper backed away, not bothering to finish him off. More elites appeared on the hill, now only half a meter tall, shrinking even faster towards a level topology. A hunter pair appeared on the slight rise and assessed Kurt. They snorted, unimpressed. Almost there, he thought. Almost done, almost won. Kurt grabbed up the Spanker launcher and fired from the hip. The missile rocketed towards one hunter, hit, exploded, and knocked it off the top. Kurt leveled his assault rifle and sprayed at the other hunter,
It turtled behind its shield. The hunter stood and growled. Its mate, bloodied and still smoking from the missile impact, stomped towards Kurt, hands ready to tear him to pieces. Kurt ventured to glance back. The rift was only a flicker now, and shrinking. His mission timer read 47 seconds. A sharp bark behind the hunters made them halt in their tracks. An elite in golden armor strode towards them, gracing Kurt with a glance that was part disdain and part respect. It jabbered an order at the hunters and the others. Kurt's translation software deciphered part of this. Damage not the center. Engineers, when the slip space field shuts, reopen the silver gate. Glory is ours. A roar of thunderous triumph burst from the gathered covenant. Kurt struggled to rise. There was more pain than he'd ever felt, and his legs turned to wet sand. His vision tunneled, but he got to his feet. He raised both hands into a fighting stance. "You haven't won," Kurt said. "You've still got me to get through." The shipmaster assessed Kurt and nodded. Perhaps understanding him, perhaps not. It gazed upon Kurt as an equal, a fellow warrior. Around them, the concentric rings settled on the floor, and with a whispered hiss, all of the rings melted into a single smooth surface. The fins touched down silently. 13 clamping armatures splayed 2 meters from the center of the room. His countdown timer blinked. 0. He exhaled. The rift was closed. Kurt opened his team roster subheading status. It moved Will, Spartan 043, Dante, Spartan G188, and Holly, Spartan G003, to the missing in action column, adhering to the tradition of never listing a fallen Spartan as killed in action. Kurt then highlighted Lieutenant Commander Kurt Ambrose and moved that name to the MIA list as well, next to Kurt, Spartan 051. The room started to spin. His mouth went dry. He tried to swallow, couldn't. His vision doubled. He thought he saw Tom and Lucy come back to get him. But it wasn't them. It was Shane, Robert, and Jane from Team Wolfpack. There were hundreds of Spartans with him on that platform, from Alpha and Beta companies, Dante, Holly, Will, and even Sam, all ready to fight and win this battle with him. Hallucinations? Maybe. It was nonetheless welcome. The ghostly Spartans nodded and gave him the thumbs up can-do signal. Kurt wouldn't let them down. All he had to do was single-handedly stop a Covenant army. One last impossible mission, the short definition of any Spartan. It was the least he owed them. The Fleetmaster Elite snarled at Kurt, and the translation filtered through his helmet speakers. "One last fight, demon. You will die, and we shall reopen the Silver Path." Die? Kurt laughed. "Don't you know?" he told the Elite. "Spartans never die." Kurt turned his gauntlet face up and pressed the detonator. And there we have it, ladies and gents, boys and girls, Spartans of all ages, a solemn exit for one of the greatest Spartans to ever live. And one last flex. Not just on the Covenant, but on me as well. Years later, going back over it, reading and transcribing that for the video, and there were times that I was getting choked up. Kurt is a wonderfully written character, and his role as a leader, and I'd go as far as to say as a father figure for the Spartan 3s, which is clearly expressed in their loyalty to him, adds a depth to his character that you really don't get to see with all the other Spartans. I mean, John's a great character, and he has tons of books to flesh him out, but he never quite reaches the emotional depth that you see Kurt reach as Ghost of Onyx reaches its conclusion. I don't know what's going on with 343 and Eric Nyland, but this book, even to this day, is still better than most of the stuff coming out of 343. Hands down. But honestly, that's a rant for another time. Let me know what you think about Ghost of Onyx in the comments below. Also, let me know what you think about this sort of reading events from books format, where I read the event and I kind of comment on it. This one was a little bigger, more in-depth than I probably should have bit off at first, but it was also my favorite flex in all of fucking Halo, so, you know, there is that. But if you guys like stuff like this, maybe I'll condense it down, find smaller, really cool scenes to work with, and read it, do some commentary, and yeah. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below as well. Remember to like this video. If this video can get 3,000 likes within the next week, I will do another Greatest Flexes in Halo. And if this video can get a whopping 5,000 likes because I'm evil, I'll do the Greatest Flexes in Destiny Part 4 or Part 5, whichever one we're on. Remember to subscribe for more content like this, and feel free to donate to my Patreon. But above all else, ladies and gents, boys and girls, Spartans of all ages, stay frosty.